Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Sherry Sidoti, who's here to share with us her new book, A Smoke and a Song, a Memoir. So are you looking to make meaning from your memories? Well, this is a discussion you'll want to listen to. Sherry Sidoti is an author, founder, and lead director of Fly Yoga School, a teacher training program, and Fly Outreach, a not-for-profit that offers yoga and meditation for those in recovery from addiction and trauma on Martha's Vineyard. So let's welcome to the show, Sherry Sidoti.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Such a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
Well, it's a great question. I think many things inspired me to write it, and I also think that the book kind of wanted to be written and chose me. So I started to write this. I started to write. I wasn't even writing a book, but I just started to kind of write in the pandemic, like many others, with more downtime and all the global changes and taking inventory of our lives. And I was on a pause from a 21-year career teaching yoga and training yoga teachers and offering my life's work in the healing arts. And I realized that after being exhausted from giving a lot, and particularly during the pandemic, having to pivot everything online, I decided to take a sabbatical from teaching because I really needed to offer the same healing that I was doing professionally back to myself. I was going through a big life transformation. There were a lot of huge changes, personal as well as global. And I really wanted to give myself some time to just create and make art. And I found that I was waking up in the middle of the night or about 3 a.m, and I was having these really strong creative surges to do that, to make art, to give myself time to do that. Happened to be in the middle of the night. And writing seemed to be the method or the medium that was calling to me most, both because it's something that I love to do, and also because it was really one of the only things I could do at that time of the day without waking up my house. So I started to just simply sit down and write. And what I was finding is that a lot of my life experiences of my own personal healing journey were being reflected back to me, and were almost like a surge that was coming out of my body that wanted to come out from me and being hidden kind of in the dark of my physical form and find the page. So I just really started to write with that intention, like, let me get out these stories that seem to be lodged in my body that want to be free and have their own life apart from me. And let me also give myself time to be a creative person and write and not focus all of my energy and attention on being of service to others. So that was really kind of the beginning of the process. And it wasn't until about 6-8 months in of doing that practice on the daily that I started to go back and read some of the passages that I was writing and really started to see the connective tissue that wove these various snippets and stories together, some of the main themes. And that's when it kind of hit me that maybe I had a book on my hands. I had always kind of thought of writing a book, but as a yoga teacher, I thought that I would be writing something more prescriptive. But what was coming forward was deeply personal and took shape more in personal storytelling and memoir. So I decided to take all of these various stories that I was writing over these months and weave it into a memoir.
So why the title A Smoke and a Song? What significance does that have?
The significance of the title A Smoke and a Song goes back to a period in my childhood where my grandmother, Elise Asher, was a painter and a poet and a writer, and she was married to a much more famous poet, Stanley Kunitz. But when I was about 12 years old, my grandmother hired me, my first job, to assist her in her painting studio while she painted. And it led to this really powerful relationship in my life between my grandmother and I, where I began to see myself differently from how I felt on the inside, as well as how others treated me on the outside. And my grandmother, I think, saw parts of me that were only revealed in her company. And so 2 days a week after school, I would go into her studio and frame her paintings, sweep the floor, tidy the kitchenette, really whatever she needed me to do in her studio. And during that time, we would dance and listen to music. She would play me all her favorite songs. And at one one of the days that I was there, she just took out a cigarette and started smoking and passed me the cigarette. And that became our little secret, I would say. That became our little kind of end of the shift reward. And it kind of sealed this like very private time that the two of us shared, where we would listen to music and smoke cigarettes together. Mind you, I'm 12 years old. And we did that for a number of years, and then I got older, and she did as well, and she stopped painting in her studio, and I started having other jobs. And some 20 years later, when I had my son, I was living in Los Angeles, and I was on the phone with her, and there was something about this moment of becoming a mother and kind of seeing this dynamic behind me of all these really fierce women, these generations of women that I had in my family, who were all very ahead of their time, yet still living within the constraints of the society that they were supposed to behave in. And I realized that, what my grandmother gave me in those earlier years was this opportunity to have something that felt like freedom within the constraints of what felt like too much structure or form of life. And in that moment where I was looking at my newborn son and talking on the phone with my grandmother, I said to her, "Oh, I could really use a smoke and a song at the studio with you right now." And she said, "Me too, darling." And so that's where the title comes from. It kind of is these two pivotal moments in my life within this long-term relationship that I had with my grandmother, who was a huge influence on me.
Is that where you feel like a lot of your creativity comes from?
I do. I feel like I got my creative spirit from both my grandmother Elise and my grandfather Stanley, who I mentioned was a poet. And but I never let that part of myself be realized as an artist. I did exercise my creativity. I think in the way that I teach yoga and the way that I weave together the spiritual teachings and mystical teachings with everyday living. I think I've been able to have kind of creative outlet, but not in just making art. And they did see that part of me. I was unable to see that part of myself until I was 50. Really, I just didn't see myself as an artist. And when I did take that time to sit and write the book and give myself permission to just write, I thought, wow, I can really say this now. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, and this part of me has been with me all along. I just didn't let myself realize it.
I was pretty impressed that you talk about how even as a child, you had this question regarding letting go. I'd love for you to expand on that for our listeners.
Yes, absolutely. This term, let it go, is something that I've heard my whole life. It's something that was kind of a mantra in our home. I grew up with a single mother, and there were three daughters, and it was a very fiery home. A lot of love, a lot of fighting, a lot of noise. And I was the youngest of the three, and I kind of took on this role as like the peacekeeper, the one to try to keep everybody happy so that outbursts wouldn't happen or fights wouldn't happen, much to my failure. And one of the mantras that kind of I think we did really well was this idea of like, yes, there are these moments that are really tense, and we have to not carry those with us. We have to let them go. So it's something that I heard starting as a child from my mother, that we just had to let go of the stuff that kept us bound and resentful and just keep moving on. And then it certainly became a huge teaching once I found the yoga and spiritual teachings, right? The mystical teachings of letting things go, finding forgiveness or allowing ourselves to not get caught in some of the congestion of life. But to me, on a personal note, it always felt nearly impossible to do so. It wasn't necessarily that I walked around feeling resentful to others. It was more how I turned that whatever challenging experiences that I had, I would turn that back onto myself. And because I couldn't completely free myself of it, it started to, I would say, form a whole lot of shame, and then self resentment, and maybe not necessarily treating myself as well as I treated others. And it was something that I kind of argued with on a spiritual basis once I really became grounded in my own spiritual practice, that, we would let go if we could. If we knew how, I'm sure most of us would choose to let things go versus clinging and, holding on to things. However, it's a practice that is often, it's amplified, but there's not a whole lot of teachings that show us how. And what I realized is that this idea of letting things go led to a lot of spiritual bypass. And to me, that wasn't something that I was able to or willing to do. And I realized that, our spiritual practice really doesn't hold any ground without the psychological part of it, without kind of digging our heels deeper into the everyday stuff versus trying to rise above or forget or just move on. And that in the digging deeper, that's where my personal journey of healing really took root. And so that's kind of the central question of my memoir is freedom found in letting go, or is it found by digging deeper into our humanness and really getting to the root of what keeps us bound and not free?
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Sherry Sidoti in regards to her new book, A Smoke and a Song. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Every day, pets are surrendered and abandoned. For these helpless and hurting animals, Paws Humane Society acts as a voice for the voiceless, providing hope for a brighter future. You can make a difference in the life of a shelter pet. Become a humane hero today. Just $10 a month will provide much-needed food, shelter, medical care, and love. It takes a community. It takes heroes like you. Together we can. Together we will. Together we are Paws Humane. Visit pawshumane.org to be a hero in every animal story.
Lindsay Roy's new book, The Gift of Perspective, is a must-read. Lindsay's unique life stories of surviving and thriving after 2 major life challenges is a wonderful companion to start your new year. It's a great guidebook for anyone facing a challenge, big or small, in business or in life. Lindsay's own stories and the anecdotes of those she met along the way help illuminate real ideas in real circumstances, drawing out reflections and actionable takeaways for all. Full of faith, grit, and humor, this book has the power to change how you see things. The Gift of Perspective is available at Amazon, or visit Lindsay's website at lindsayroy.com. I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Sherry Sidoti, who's here sharing with us her new book, A Smoke and a Song, a Memoir. As you explored that question, did you discover a sense of personal freedom moving through that?
Yes. I think my life journey has enabled me to bit by bit find a lot of freedom. Having exercises and practices, techniques, studying trauma-informed practices and resilience, yoga, meditation. These practices have certainly guided my healing journey, but it happened little bit by little bit. It didn't come down like a bolt of lightning where all of a sudden I understood this concept and it just became a way of life. Like all spiritual practices, it's had to be actually exercised on a daily basis. So certainly. And then in writing the memoir, there was both, there was an interplay, like an oscillation between going back into memory, returning to some of these experiences and getting kind of hooked by them. And at the same time, because I had 20 plus years of practice behind me, I was able to use my yoga, meditation, and spiritual practices to work with my nervous system, to work with my understanding of the experience as I re-experienced it in writing, and recalibrate from there and almost reparent the parts of myself that still had some rustiness or rawness, from some of the experiences that I was returning to in the writing process. So the writing itself was another layer of that, of digging in order to let instead of letting go. And in the letting process, what it was that needed to go did. And the same with the revising and editing of the manuscript. That was like another couple of layers of the same process. And now that the book is living in the world, I feel like it's like out of my body and now having its own life. There seems to be even more of that reprocessing and freedom that is found in the telling of and then the setting of the story free.
That's just so empowering hearing how that works. But I think it's just something that gives people a lot of hope, because as we go through this letting go process, a lot of people have a hard time doing that, as you were talking about. But being able to really address it in layers, that seems like that'd be so much more helpful.
I think so. I mean, for me personally, and even in life, like even for those who are not interested in writing their story or making art from their story or doing memoir of any sort, I do think that it's an ongoing, lifelong journey. It's not to say that some of our experiences don't have to be revisited and relived and reprocessed multiple times in our life, but there is a new place that we start at and leave each time we return to them. And so I think that there is a lot of value in returning and really examining our childhood, our attachment strategies, where we get bound in some of the human conditions and afflictions. We don't want to spend our whole life there because, that's no fun. But it is important, I think, and I think we just naturally do it, or life does it for us, where we have certain scenarios repeat themselves until we decide, okay, this pattern needs to be repatterned. And repatterning takes attention and it takes practice. and devotion in order to repattern, to create a habit, for example, or to repattern an old one. Many of us are going through life unaware, or maybe not, consciously aware of the things that we're carrying, survival strategies and coping mechanisms that really do impact not only our relationships and our day-to-day living, but even our spiritual practices. And unless we want to devote some time and attention to examining that, we may just continue through life kind of almost like creating a deeper groove in our patterns versus creating new grooves.
I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? It's just they're so used to this old groove. How do they find the ability to move beyond that?
Yeah. It's fortunately for us, and especially in this day and age, there are thousands and thousands of tools available to us if we want them. But we really have to commit to them, which is not an easy thing to do because there are many interferences, right? There are many, many interferences. And, I'm a firm believer that, we work on ourselves or on our own practices as an offering to the planet. But it doesn't end there. We then have to go out and share that with the world and serve the planet as that person to continue to heal ourselves. So it's like this circular thing that happens that, I commit to my own healing. And in that, I'm offering a healing to the planet when I step out into the world. But then I really need to actively share that and be of service to others. And in doing so, I continue to be healed.
Your book talks about leaning into our wounds to find the wisdom. And I think a lot of times people would have a hard time doing that. How did you do that?
Yes. Well, I think when I think of, or when I speak of wounds, there are so many different wounds. There are the wounds that we've experienced, the scars from our own personal life experiences. We also have environmental or societal wounds of just depending on who we are and the place that we have in life. There are many cultural wounds that we are acquiring as well. And then even more so, there's what we've inherited from the generations behind us. So there's this transgenerational capacity to, or not even capacity, but this transgenerational passing of trauma and wounding. And, but within all of those wounds, there is the wisdom, there's the learning, there's the seeing the experience from a bird's eye view or from a more holistic perspective as to what might be the gold in there, what we learned by going through that experience. When we've had enough of those experiences, like when we enter a certain phase in life where we've survived and even thrived post a difficult experience, then we can start to see those wounds start to reveal themselves as wisdom as well as the wound. So not to bypass the hurt and just go to the light. That's certainly not what I'm saying. But to be able to see the bigger meaning behind the mess. And there almost often is. There's not always, some things just happen that are really challenging with no learning and no explanation. But most of the things, I think, at least on my own personal journey, that have been very difficult to live through have also provided me with so much impetus to learn more, to study, to seek help, to seek professionals, to study myself, and to see something bigger in there. And I genuinely believe that when we do that kind of active exploration of our life and we start to find these little nuggets of wisdom that come forward in our wounding, that we're not only healing our own wounds, but we're doing some kind of repair from the rupture that took place to our mothers, our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, as well as, like we said before, changing patterns so that we're not then passing these on to our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren. So I feel like there's a bigger purpose or a bigger motivation behind healing that's not just, I want to feel better, but there is this, 7-generational healing that could potentially take place when we access or when we can activate the wisdom in our pain. And we all are living with these pain points, right? They're there to teach us something about ourselves, about the family that we come from, about the habits that we've inherited, the belief systems that we've inherited that maybe we don't need to continue to pass to the future generations.
What do you want readers and our listeners to take away from your book, A Smoke and a Song?
I think the most important thing that I would like the readers to experience is that that the healing journey we are all on, whether we're aware of it or not, and that the more actively we participate in that, the more fruitful it will be. And in telling my story, what I really hope is that the reader can find that through my story, she or he or they find glimpses of their own and are willing or motivated or inspired to look into their own story and have that self-reflection of their own story through reading mine. And I do think that is the beauty of memoir. I think memoir does that by its very essence. We read someone else's experience, we relate their experience to our own, and then we may have some aha moments while we're reading someone else's story. I intentionally wrote this book in present tense versus me now looking back at my life experiences with all that I know now. So I made the choice to go back and rewrite the entire book into present tense, which meant that I was only writing each chapter from what I knew at that time in my life and not what I know now. And I chose to do that so that the reader could be with me along my journey, in the experience with me, and thus be having their own experience along the way as well. I didn't really want to be teaching anything in my writing. I really wanted to just offer some kind of sacred space for the reader to have their own experiences, whether it was emotional experiences or anything else that they felt while they were reading it. So it was a very conscious choice that I made to give the reader an embodied experience versus telling my story with all that I know as a 50-something-year-old woman, reflecting on life and then offering, nuggets of learning or lessons. I just really didn't want to do that. So my hope is that the reader has their own experience. They're in touch with their emotional body. They're in touch with their physical body. They're in touch with their energy body while they're having a reader's experience. And thus they're then having their own experience while they read it.
Well, Sherry, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your book, A Smoke and a Song?
Thank you. My website is sherrysidoti.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, Sherry Sidoti, for both of them. And the book can be found wherever you buy your books, whether especially online, all the online retailers, and then at a lot of local bookshops as well. Amazon, of course, Bookshop, etc.
Well, Sherry, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. And thank you for this podcast. I've been listening to so many episodes, and there's just such a wealth of wisdom that you and your guests offer to the listener. And it's been a joy to listen. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Sherry. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, A Smoke and a Song, a Memoir. A Smoke and a Song is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.